Hi there, this is Kaushik Ranchod from the Ranchod Law Group, immigration attorney serving clients throughout the 50 states. Welcome to our immigration show. Today what we're talking about is permanent residency, what you need to be aware of to keep your permanent residency when you're traveling. This is so important during the pandemic because, and this is why you're going to want to stay tuned to watch this video till the end, because we're going to be talking about, with the pandemic, with the travel restrictions, what is happening to your green card potentially if you're outside the United States too long. How does that affect your green card status? So you'll want to watch this video if you haven't already. Smash the like button. I invite you to also subscribe to make sure you continue to get these videos. Now let's jump into it, my friends. All right, well, with COVID, travel restrictions are changing depending upon the virus, and that's changing all the time. Now, we've had, first of all, of course, COVID, then we had the Delta, and now it's Omicron, and it just keeps on changing. And with that, the travel restrictions are also changing. So my first recommendation is don't travel. If you don't have to, don't travel so you're not stuck outside the United States. I get so many calls where people are outside the United States with their permanent residency. They want to know how to get back in. So just like in medicine, prevention is better than actually trying to take medicine. So here, the prevention is don't travel rather than trying to come up with a solution at the end, which we're going to talk about the solution in this video if you're already outside the United States. So at least you have a remedy. But if you can not travel, I highly recommend that. As a permanent resident, you must maintain U.S. permanent residence in the U.S. or you risk losing your permanent residency. So there's also how much time you're outside the United States versus in the United States that really is very important. We're going to go over that. There's basically three different scenarios on what USCIS looks at to determine whether or not you are maintaining your residency with time in and of itself. So let's talk about less than 180 days. If you're outside of the U.S. less than 180 days, there's no presumption of abandoning your residence. Now, that doesn't mean that USCIS could still find that you've abandoned your residence, because, for instance, if you're making frequent trips in and outside of the United States and you're outside for more than 180 days in a year, I've seen situations where USCIS still tries to make the argument that you've abandoned your residence because you're outside the U.S. so much, even if you're not outside the United States for more than 180 days. Now, what about if you're outside of the United States for more than 180 days, but less than a year? Now, it's really important to note that this is 180 days, not 6 months. 180 days, you need to count the days because that's a little bit different than 6 months. So if you're outside of the United States for more than 180 days, there's a presumption that you've abandoned your residence. So this means that the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate that you have not abandoned your residence in the United States. Another way of putting it is that the government is assuming that you have abandoned your residence and you need to prove otherwise. So you don't want to be in that position, of course. So it's really important for you to note that 180-day rule. Now, what if you're outside of the United States for more than a year? This equals automatic loss of your lawful permanent residence unless you've taken steps to prevent this. Otherwise, we're going to talk about what those steps are, what you could do to preserve your residency. If you know that you're outside the United States for more than a year, what could you do? There are steps that you could take to help prevent this, but my advice to you is do not stay out of the United States for more than a year, but sometimes you can't prevent that. So we'll go into what steps you could take. Now, with the pandemic, sometimes people have not been able to travel, just because of the travel restrictions. So it's really important that you try, if you're questioned, usually this issue, first of all, where does this issue practically come up? It's generally at the port of entry when you're returning to the United States. That's where you may be questioned. It comes down also to what your intent is. Do you intend to maintain a permanent residency in the United States or not? Evidence of maintaining your permanent residency in the United States beyond the time is also important as well. Like, for instance, do you have a house in the United States? Do you have other property in the United States? Those are some examples. If you're outside of the United States for more than 180 days, it's much more likely that you're going to be questioned because there is that presumption, rather than if you were outside of the United States less than 180 days. Let's go back to the scenario of where you're outside of the United States for more than a year. So you know you have to be outside the United States for more than a year. You don't want to lose your green card. What do you do? Well, you can apply for a re-entry permit to help preserve your permanent residency. It's not a guarantee that the re-entry permit will preserve it, but it will significantly increase your odds of being able to maintain your permanent residency. The next question that I received about the re-entry permit is, well, can I apply for the re-entry permit outside of the United States? So the answer to that question is no, you must apply before you leave the United States. Additionally, you must also be able to go to your biometrics appointment. Next question about the biometrics is, well, when will I get the biometrics? So that can be anywhere from several weeks to several months. It could be a little bit longer with COVID, because that's slowing everything down. But you also need to make sure you attend that biometrics appointment as well. And again, you need to be physically present in the United States when you apply for your re-entry permit. The next question is, what do I do if I leave the United States before getting my re-entry permit? So there's not a policy exception right now that USCIS has announced about this issue. So it's important for you to stay in the United States to get your re-entry permit. If you stay outside of the United States for more than a year from the date of the re-entry permit, again, it goes back to that rule that you've abandoned your residency. So the same thing as if you've stayed outside the United States for more than a year as a lawful permanent resident. Same thing with the re-entry permit as well. You've abandoned your residency at that point. Now you might be thinking, well, that totally sucks. What am I supposed to do? The pandemic's here. And I agree, with the pandemic, it does not seem very fair at all. The law is what it is. So what do you do in this situation? You can apply for an SB1 at the embassy. So there is that possible solution for you. If you've been outside of the United States for more than a year, you didn't apply for a re-entry permit, look at the SB1 option. The SB1 is a way for you to become a returning visa resident and be able to travel back to the United States if you're able to get that. So look at that option. I hope this video served you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you learned what you can do about maintaining your lawful permanent residency. Make sure you subscribe and get notifications so you can continue to keep informed, especially during these times where everything is just changing crazy with the pandemic. And you're amazing for watching this video. By bettering yourself, you're bettering your family. By bettering your family, you're bettering our country. Bye for now.